The sky was black glass smeared with stars, and the sea didn't move. Not in any way a person could feel from the steel deck of a cargo ship cutting through the Atlantic like a blade through silk. But Captain Norah Quincaid felt it anyway. She felt it in the roll under her knees, in the salt that clung to her cracked lips, and in the way the air smelled of diesel and something darker. She was on her knees, hands zip-tied behind her back, ankles shackled to a cinder block slick with ocean slime. Barefoot now. One boot had been ripped off in the scuffle. The other lay 10 feet away, useless as every promise her country had made about bringing her home safe. They'd spent 72 hours trying to break her, asking about routes, schedules, encryption keys, asking who else knew about the shipment. She'd given them nothing. Not her clearance level, not her team designation, not even her middle name. So they'd moved past questions into something darker. Waterboarding in a storage container until her lungs felt like shredded paper. Stress positions that made her shoulders scream languages she didn't speak. Sleep deprivation while diesel engines roared inches from her head, turning thought into static, sanity into a thing that flickered like a dying bulb. Still nothing. That's when they decided she was more dangerous alive than useful dead. "Sharks don't circle water," one of the men muttered behind her. Not a soldier's voice. Contract work. Eastern European accent. Paid to do cleanup, not ask questions. Another one lit a cigarette and blew the smoke sideways into the salt wind. "She'll be crab meat by dawn." Neither of them used her name. That was the point. Captain Norah Quincaid, Naval Intelligence, SEAL qualified operator with 11 years of service and a file thicker than most phone books, didn't exist on this boat. Didn't exist on any manifest or any radio frequency or any page a satellite could read. She'd vanished 4 days ago somewhere between Charleston and the open Atlantic, just like they wanted. Except they hadn't expected her to still be breathing. "You sure she ain't tagged?" the first one asked. The second man reached down, grabbed her by the jaw, and twisted her face toward the ship's floodlight. Blood smeared down her temple from a cut above her brow. Her left eye was almost swollen shut from where they'd worked her over with fists in patience. He grunted. "She's clean." They hadn't checked her wetsuit liner. Not properly. And even if they had, they wouldn't have known what to look for. The little ridge sewn into the seam behind her knee wasn't for comfort. It was a backup blade. Ceramic, waterproof, invisible to metal detectors. But that wouldn't matter if she hit the water wrong. The third man didn't speak at all. He just stepped forward, grabbed the cinder block, and dragged her toward the edge of the deck. Her knees scraped raw over the grating, skin tearing, blood leaving a trail like breadcrumbs that would wash away with the next wave. She didn't fight. Couldn't. Not yet. Eyes half-lidded, chest heaving in measured rhythm, she was conserving oxygen, not surrendering. The sea opened up beneath her like a black grave with no headstone. Then he appeared, Dimitri Vulov, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a kind of calm that came from never being questioned, never being wrong. He stopped beside her, hands clasped behind his back, and looked down at her like she was debris left on deck after a storm. "Captain Quincaid," he said. His English was clean, almost accent-free, but there was a coldness in it that no language could hide. The kind of cold that came from places where winter lasted 9 months, and mercy was a foreign concept. "You Americans think you own everything, the land, the sky, the water." She didn't respond, didn't give him the satisfaction. He crouched down, bringing his face level with hers, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, the tobacco embedded in his jacket. "SEALs especially. You think because you train in water, you own it. You think the ocean respects your little badges and your flags?" Her lips didn't move, but her eyes did. They locked onto his, steady, unblinking. Dimitri smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Let's test that theory." He stood, nodded once to the man holding the block, and stepped back. "Goodbye, Captain." The block went over. She followed. Water swallowed her whole. The weight dragged her fast, faster than her lungs were ready for. But she didn't panic. She twisted just enough to take the pressure off her ribs and let the block pull her vertical. 10 feet, 20, 30, light vanished. She opened her eyes, and even in the dark, the muscle memory kicked in. Her fingers moved behind her back, searching for the blade in the seam. Found it, tilted her wrist, began sawing. She wasn't dead, not yet, not even close. But above her, on the deck of the MV Black Horizon, Dimitri Vulov was already turning away. The cigarette smoker flicked his butt into the ocean and followed. The engines rumbled louder. The freighter began to move, slicing through black water like it had done 100 times before. None of them looked back. They didn't know what she was. Not really, and that was their first mistake. 96 hours earlier, the world had been different. San Diego Naval Base, early morning, the kind of light that made everything look clean and sharp, like the whole city had been scrubbed overnight by angels working the graveyard shift. Norah Quincaid sat in a windowless briefing room with her hands folded on the table, listening to a man she didn't trust explain a mission she already knew she'd take. The briefing officer was young, late 30s maybe, clean uniform, clean desk, the kind of guy who'd spent his career behind screens instead of in the field. His hands had never been cold enough to lose feeling. His lungs had never burned from holding breath at depth. He clicked through slides on a monitor while two other officers sat silent in the corner, watching her with the kind of attention that made her skin itch. MV Black Horizon, the briefing officer said, tapping the screen. A cargo ship appeared, rust-streaked hull, Panamanian flag, unremarkable in every way except one. Flagged 6 weeks ago by Port Authority in Norfolk. Manifest says medical supplies and agricultural equipment. Reality says otherwise. He clicked again. A photo of wooden crates stacked in a shipping container. Stenciled labels half scraped off. She could still read the markings underneath. U.S. Navy Mark 48 Advanced Capability Torpedoes. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. Stolen from a decommissioned facility outside Norfolk, along with small arms, encryption devices, and classified navigation software. Shipments headed for Puntland. Best guess, Somali pirate networks. Or worse. The officer paused, looking at her like he expected a reaction. She gave him nothing. He continued. We've got satellite telemetry showing the Black Horizon docked in Charleston 2 days ago. Loading crew. Scheduled departure tomorrow night. After that, it's international waters, and we lose jurisdiction. So intercept it, Norah said. Her voice was calm, flat. The voice of someone who'd said harder things in harder rooms. The officers shifted. Legals dragging their feet. Not enough probable cause for a maritime boarding without a friendly flag state. By the time we get authorization, the cargo's offloaded and scattered. Then don't ask for permission. One of the officers in the corner leaned forward, Admiral's insignia on his collar. Older, 60, maybe 65. Graying hair, deep-set eyes that had seen more than one bad call play out in real time. We need proof, he said. Visual confirmation. Hard evidence that ties the cargo to naval theft. Something a judge can't ignore. Norah looked at him directly. You want someone inside. We want you inside. The room went quiet. She let the silence sit for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. What's the play? The briefing officer clicked to the next slide. A dockyard, workers in hard hats, cranes swinging cargo like pendulums, counting down to something inevitable. You go in as contract labor, loading crew for the Charleston run, plant a tracker on the hull, get visual confirmation of the cargo, then extract before the ship leaves port. And if I can't extract? The Admiral's expression didn't change. Then you stay on board, survive until we can intercept. Norah studied the screen, the ship, the crew, the timeline. It wasn't a good plan. It was a desperate one, the kind of plan that only worked if everything went right. And in her experience, nothing ever went right. But she'd seen those torpedoes before. She knew what they could do. "I'll need full operational autonomy," she said. "Echo 6 clearance. If things go sideways, I'm not waiting for permission to act." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Granted. And I want Commander Ashford read in." The briefing officer frowned. "Commander Ashford's retired." "I don't care." Nora's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "He trained me. If I'm going dark, he's the only one I trust in the other end of the line." The Admiral glanced at the briefing officer, then back at her. "Done." Nora stood. "Then I'm in." She was halfway to the door when the Admiral spoke again. "Captain Quincaid." She stopped, didn't turn around. "This goes bad, we can't pull you out. You understand that?" She looked over her shoulder, met his eyes. "I've been pulled out of worse." Then she walked out, and the door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a countdown starting. But before she'd even reached the parking lot, before she'd climbed into her truck and driven away from the base with its clean buildings and cleaner consciences, her phone buzzed. One message, no caller ID. "Storage Facility 7, mile marker 14. 1 hour. Come alone. Flint." She drove. 30 minutes later, she was standing in a storage facility 2 miles off base, staring at a table covered in gear. Wetsuit, ceramic blade, magnetic beacon the size of a deck of cards, CO2 flotation sleeve, emergency signal mirror, everything stripped down to the essentials. Everything designed to be invisible until it mattered. And standing across from her, holding a cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping him upright, was Commander Garrett Ashford. 68 years old, graying beard cropped close. Shoulders still broad despite the years, despite the way time carved lines into faces and turned certainty into questions. Hands scarred from 1,000 training drills and a few real fights that never made it into official reports. He'd been her instructor at Fort Story, her mentor during her first deployment, and the only person in the Navy who'd ever told her the truth when she needed to hear it, even when the truth tasted like copper and ash. He set the coffee down and picked up the ceramic blade, turning it over in his palm like he was reading something written in a language only old warriors understood. "You really think they'll throw you overboard?" he asked. "If they catch me?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's cleaner than a bullet, no evidence, no body." Flint grunted, slid the blade across the table toward her. "Then you better make sure you're ready for it." She picked it up, tested the weight, the grip. The blade felt right, like an extension of intent. "I've done the drills," she said. "Pool training, 60 feet, zip-tied, weighted block. I know the protocols." "Protocols don't mean shit when you're bleeding and freezing and the ocean's trying to kill you." She met his eyes. "You taught me those protocols. I taught you how to survive a controlled environment." His voice dropped, went rough. "This isn't controlled. This is you alone in open water with no backup, no comms, and no second chances." He leaned forward, and for a moment she saw the man he'd been. The operator who'd survived things that would have broken most people. The commander who'd pulled bodies out of dark water and kept going because going was the only option. "If they throw you in," he said quietly, "you're going to want to panic. Your body's going to scream at you to inhale. You're going to see darkness and think it's over." He paused. "And you don't listen. You count. You breathe when you surface, not before. You find the blade. You cut the ties. You kick. You do it in that order, no matter what your brain tells you." She nodded slowly. Flint exhaled, rubbed his jaw. "You really want to do this? They're using our weapons, Mark 48s. "I know." His voice was sharp, then softer. "I know what they are." She didn't push, didn't need to. Flint had been there, Fort Story, 2 years ago, when a training accident went bad and Lieutenant Sienna Vale didn't come back up. Nora had pulled her body out of the water herself, tried CPR for 11 minutes while Flint called it in, his voice steady on the radio even as his hands shook. Sienna had been 28, brilliant tactical mind, one of the best combat divers Nora had ever worked with. And now someone was selling the same weapons that had killed her. Flint picked up the wetsuit, found the seam behind the knee, and made a small incision with a pocket knife. He slid the ceramic blade inside, then handed her a needle and thread. "Sew it tight," he said. "You don't want it slipping when you need it." She took the needle and started stitching. Slow, precise, the way he'd taught her. Flint watched for a moment, then spoke again. "Baltic Sea, 1983. Soviets were tracking our submarine operations off Iceland. They grabbed me during a surface check, threw me overboard with my hands tied and a weight belt on." He paused, eyes distant. "Water was 34 degrees, cold enough to stop your heart in minutes. I thought I was done." "How'd you survive?" "Didn't think about surviving, thought about the next second. Cut the ties with a blade I had hidden exactly where you're putting yours. Then I swam, 12 miles to a Norwegian fishing boat." He looked at her directly. "Fear is just your body asking if you're sure. The answer is always yes." Nora tied off the stitch, tested the seam. The blade was invisible unless you knew where to look. She glanced up at him. "You ever lose someone in open water?" Flint's jaw tightened. "Mogadishu, 93. My whole team went down in a helicopter over the Indian Ocean. I was the only one who made it to shore." He paused, and for a moment she could see the weight of it. The names, the faces, the things that didn't fade no matter how many years passed. "Spent 6 hours in the water," he said. "No gear, no flotation, just me and the current." "How'd you survive?" "I didn't think about surviving. I thought about the next stroke, then the next one, then the next one." He looked at her. "You do that long enough, you look up and you're still alive." Nora folded the wetsuit, set it aside. Sienna's last words were, "Finish what you start, Quincaid. Always." Flint's expression softened just slightly, the kind of softening that came from recognizing truth in the shape of grief. "Then finish it." She nodded, picked up the magnetic beacon, clipped it to her belt. "If this goes bad, it won't. If it does," she insisted, "then I'll be listening." Flint's voice was still wrapped in something older, something unbreakable. "You ping that beacon, I'll move heaven and earth to get you out." He waited until she looked at him. "Ocean doesn't care about training. It doesn't care how tough you are or how many missions you've run. It just takes. So when you're out there, you remember, panic drowns more seals than bullets. You stay calm. You stay smart. You come home." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she picked up the gear and walked toward the door. "Nora," she stopped. "Make them regret it." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The look in her eyes said everything. 24 hours later, she was standing on a loading dock in Charleston, South Carolina, wearing coveralls and a hard hat, blending into a crew of 30 contract workers hauling crates onto the MV Black Horizon. The ship was uglier up close, rust bleeding through old paint like wounds that never quite healed, deck plating warped from years of saltwater abuse. But the cranes were running smooth, and the cargo kept moving. Crate after crate, most of it legitimate, agricultural equipment, medical supplies, exactly what the manifest said. But Nora knew better. She'd spent the morning watching the loading pattern, the way certain crates were handled differently, the way 2 men in civilian clothes stood apart from the crew, watching every move with a kind of attention that didn't come from union wages. One of them was Dimitri Vulov. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew the type. Former military, Eastern European. The way he moved, the way he scanned the dock, the way his hand never strayed far from his jacket. He wasn't here to supervise cargo. He was here to protect something. And she was going to find out what. She waited until the shift changed. Chaos on the dock as workers clocked out and new ones clocked in. She slipped past the checkpoint with a group heading below deck, then peeled off down a side corridor while voices echoed behind her like ghosts in a machine. The lower hold was darker, narrower, pipes dripping condensation. The smell of diesel fuel thick enough to taste, thick enough to coat the back of her throat like oil. She moved quietly, boots barely whispering against steel grating, until she found what she was looking for. A cargo container, reinforced locks, no markings except a serial number spray-painted on the side in white that was already flaking. She knelt, pulled a small pry bar from her belt, and worked the lock. It gave with a soft click. Inside, wooden crates stacked floor to ceiling. She pulled one forward, found the seam, and cracked it open. Mark 48 Advanced Capability Torpedoes. U.S. Navy stencil, half scraped off, but still visible if you knew what to look for. Her jaw clenched. She pulled out her phone, snapped 3 photos from different angles, then closed the crate and backed out of the container. She moved quickly through the cargo hold, staying low, until she reached the hull access panel. The magnetic beacon was no bigger than a deck of cards, disguised as a rusted hull plate. She peeled off the adhesive backing, positioned it on the interior hull plating, port side, midline, and pressed hard. The device activated with a faint click. Green LED blinked once, then went dark. Transmission live. She had maybe 30 seconds before, "You lost?" She froze, turned slowly. Dimitri Vulov stood in the corridor behind her, hands in his pockets, expression calm. But his eyes weren't calm. They were sharp, calculating. The eyes of a man who'd survived by noticing things other people missed. "Wrong turn," she said, keeping her voice steady, bored even. "Looking for the head. Bathrooms are 2 decks up." He didn't move. "You're new," he said. "Started today. What's your name?" Sarah Collins." The cover identity slid out smooth. She'd rehearsed it 100 times, but standing there, under his gaze, it felt thin, transparent. Dimitri studied her. Too long, too carefully. Then he stepped aside, gestured down the corridor. "Bathroom's that way." She nodded, walked past him, feeling his eyes on her back the whole way. She didn't look back, didn't run, just kept walking until she reached the stairs and climbed back up to the main deck. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. The beacon was planted. The photos were secured. All she had to do was get off the ship before it left port. Simple. Except 12 hours later, when the black horizon was 30 miles offshore and the coastline was a memory dissolving into blue distance, Dimitri Vulov walked into the crew quarters and dropped her military ID onto the table in front of her. "Sarah Collins," he said softly. "Except that's not your real name, is it?" And that's when Norah knew the plan had just gone sideways. They didn't waste time. 2 men grabbed her before she could react, slammed her face first into the bulkhead. The impact sent stars across her vision, blood blooming hot and immediate from her nose. Zip-tied her wrists behind her back with a kind of efficiency that spoke of practice, of routine. She didn't fight. Not yet. Fighting now would only make them more careful, more thorough. She needed them to think she was helpless. Dimitri stood in the doorway, watching as they hauled her upright. Blood dripped from her nose where it had hit the wall, but she didn't wipe it away, just stared at him. "Who are you?" he asked. She said nothing. He nodded to one of the men. A fist drove into her stomach. Air exploded from her lungs. She doubled over, gasping, but still didn't speak. Dimitri crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. "You planted something on my ship, a tracker. Where is it?" She met his eyes, said nothing. Another punch, this one to the ribs. She heard something crack, felt fire spread across her side, like someone had pressed a brand to her skin and held it there. But she kept her mouth shut. Dimitri stood, brushed off his pants like he'd just finished a business meeting. "Take her to the container," he said. "We'll see how long she lasts." They dragged her below deck, past crew quarters, past the engine room, all the way to the cargo hold where the stolen weapons sat in their crates, like sins waiting to be counted. They threw her inside a storage container, chained her wrist to a support beam, and left her there in the dark. The door slammed shut. Lock clicked. Norah leaned back against the wall, breathing through the pain, and started counting. Guard rotations, 8-hour shifts, 3 men per rotation. 2 posted outside the container, 1 roaming the hold. She had 48 hours before they either got what they wanted or decided she was more trouble than she was worth. She was betting on the latter. And when that happened, she needed to be ready. They came for her every 6 hours. Sometimes it was waterboarding, the kind where they tilted her back, covered her face with cloth that smelled like oil and old sweat, and poured water until her body convulsed with the certainty of drowning, even though her mind knew it wasn't real. Except it felt real. Every single time, it felt real. Sometimes it was stress positions, arms chained above her head until her shoulders screamed languages older than words, until the muscles tore themselves apart trying to hold weight they weren't designed to carry for hours on end. Sometimes they just beat her and asked questions she wouldn't answer. Who sent you? Who else knows? What agency? What backup? She gave them nothing. Not her rank, not her clearance, not even a curse word. SIR training had taught her that pain was just noise. Loud, overwhelming noise that tried to drown out everything else. But still just noise. And noise could be filtered, compartmentalized, shoved into a box in the back of her mind while the rest of her stayed sharp. So she counted guard rotations, footsteps, the rhythm of the engines, the distant sound of waves against the hull. She memorized the layout of the ship, the distance from the container to the stairs, the blind corners where guards couldn't see, the location of the weapons cache, the radio room, the engine controls. She cataloged weaknesses, the backup generator that didn't exist, the emergency ladder to the helipad, the port side ballast vent she'd noticed during infiltration. And when Dimitri came to see her on the second day, she was ready. He walked into the container with his hands behind his back, looking at her the way someone might look at a stray dog. Curious, mildly annoyed. "You're tougher than I expected," he said. She didn't respond. "Most people break by now. Beg. Bargain." He tilted his head. "But not you." Still nothing. Dimitri sighed, pulled a chair over, and sat down. The metal scraped against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. "I'm going to tell you something, Captain Quincaid," he smiled. "Yes, I know your name. I know your rank. I know your naval intelligence. I even know about your SEAL background." Norah's expression didn't change, but inside her mind was racing. If he knew who she was, then he knew she wasn't just some analyst. He knew she was trained, dangerous, which meant he wasn't going to risk keeping her alive much longer. "These weapons," Dimitri continued, gesturing vaguely toward the crates outside. "Mark 48 torpedoes, encryption devices, navigation software. You know what they're worth?" She said nothing. $40 million, enough to fund 3 years of operations, enough to arm a small fleet, enough to make certain people very, very angry at the United States Navy. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "And you were going to ruin that. One woman with a tracker and a camera." He stood, walked to the container door, then looked back at her. "I respect that, I do, but respect doesn't change the outcome." He paused and his voice dropped lower, colder. "You know, I fought in Afghanistan, 1985 to 88, same age you are now. Believed in the Soviet Union the way you believe in America." He pulled the chair closer, sat again. "My commander was like your Ashford, old, hard, taught me everything. Survive, fight, never surrender." His eyes went distant for a moment. "Then the USSR collapsed. My commander died in Grozny, 1999. Forgotten, unpaid, broken. The system he believed in betrayed him." Dimitri leaned forward. "That's your future, Quincaid. Your country will use you, discard you, just like mine did to me." Norah finally spoke, Her voice was quiet, but steady. Difference is, Flint taught me loyalty to people, to Sienna, to the sailors who'll die if your weapons reach terrorists. Dimitri's eyes narrowed. Sienna? Norah realized her mistake. Said too much. Dimitri smiled. Personal vendetta makes you weak, predictable. He nodded to someone outside. A man stepped in, tall, broad, dead eyes. The kind of man who didn't ask questions because he didn't care about answers. We're done with her, Dimitri said. Ocean's cleaner than a bullet, no evidence, no body. The man grunted, walked over to Norah, grabbed her by the arm, and hauled her upright. Pain screamed through her ribs where they'd cracked bone, but she didn't make a sound. Dimitri paused at the door. For what it's worth, Captain, you lasted longer than most. That counts for something. Then he walked out, and the man dragged her toward the deck. Night had fallen. The ocean was black and endless. Stars scattered above like broken glass. Norah's vision swam, ribs throbbing with every breath. But her mind was clear. They chained her ankles to the cinder block. The man didn't say a word, just locked the shackles tight, tested the weight, and stepped back. Dimitri appeared beside her. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His presence said everything. After a long moment, he nodded once. Let's see if Americans float. The man kicked the block. She went over without a sound. Water hit her like a wall. Cold, brutal, swallowing her whole in one massive gulp that tasted like salt and diesel and the end of things. The weight dragged her down fast, chains biting into her ankles, zip ties cutting into her wrists. 10 feet, 20, 30, light faded, pressure built. Her lungs screamed, but her hands were already moving. Behind her back, searching, finding the seam in her wetsuit. The blade was exactly where Flint had sewn it. She tilted her wrist, began sawing. Above her, the MV Black Horizon's engines rumbled louder, and the ship started to move. Dimitri stood at the rail for a moment, watching the place where she'd gone under. Then he turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He didn't know what she was. Not really. And by the time he figured it out, it would be too late. Because Norah Quincaid wasn't drowning. She was just getting started. The blade was sharp. Flint had made sure of that. But underwater, with hands numb and wrists twisted behind her back, sharp didn't mean easy. It meant possible. And possible was all she needed. Norah twisted the ceramic edge against the zip tie, feeling the serrated teeth catch and pull. The block kept dragging her down. 40 feet, 50. Her ears popped. Pressure squeezed her skull like a vice, tightening one rotation at a time. She didn't think about the surface, didn't think about air. Thinking about what she didn't have was how people drowned. She thought about the next pull, the next scrape of blade against plastic. The tie was industrial grade, 3/8 of an inch thick, rated for 250 pounds of tensile strength. But tensile strength assumed even pressure, assumed the restraint wasn't being sawed at by someone who'd spent 6 months in training, learning exactly how to escape from worse. 60 feet down, the tie snapped. Her hands came free. She immediately grabbed for her ankles, fingers finding the shackle locks. But these weren't zip ties. These were steel, old iron padlocks that Dimitri's crew had probably been using for decades. No key, no weakness, just rust and weight and ocean pulling her deeper. 70 feet. Her lungs were starting to burn now, not screaming yet, but aware, making their presence known, reminding her that she was 30 seconds from critical, maybe 45 if she stayed calm. She kicked once, testing the block. It barely shifted, too heavy, too much momentum. She couldn't swim up with it, and she couldn't break the chains, but she could break herself free from them. Norah bent her knees, drawing her legs up as tight as the shackles allowed, then drove both feet down onto the block with everything she had. The chains went taut, her ankles screamed, but the shackles, rusted and old, shifted slightly against her skin. She kicked again, harder, the metal bit deeper. tearing skin, drawing blood that dissolved into black water. But the shackles moved another quarter inch. Third kick. The left shackle slipped over her heel. She yanked her foot free, skin tearing, blood blooming, and suddenly she had one leg loose. The block tilted, spinning slightly, pulling her sideways. She used the momentum, twisted her right ankle, ignored the pain, and pulled. The shackle caught on her ankle bone. Held. She pulled harder, feeling tissue compress, feeling metal scrape bone. And then it gave. Her foot came free in a hot rush of pain that barely registered because she was already kicking upward. The block disappeared into the dark below her. Gone. Irrelevant. Norah kicked toward the surface. Her lungs were past burning now. They were clenching, spasming, her body screaming at her to inhale. Open your mouth. Breathe. Doesn't matter that it's water. Just breathe. She didn't. Flint's voice in her head, clear as if he were beside her. Count. Don't guess. Count. She counted kicks. 1, 2, 3. Each one pushing her higher. Each one burning through oxygen she didn't have. 15 feet from the surface, her vision started to tunnel. Black creeping in from the edges. Her body making executive decisions. Shutting down non-essential systems to keep her brain alive just a few seconds longer. 10 feet. She could see the faint shimmer of moonlight on water above her. So close. 5 feet. Her mouth opened involuntarily, body overriding mind. She clamped it shut, but the reflex was there, ready to betray her. 3 feet. Her hand found the CO2 cartridge clipped to her belt. Small cylinder, no bigger than a lipstick tube. She yanked the release pin. The flotation sleeve inflated with a hiss, wrapping around her ribs, jerking her upward like an invisible hand pulling her toward air. She broke the surface, gasping, mouth wide, lungs exploding inward, dragging oxygen in with a sound that was half sob, half scream. For 10 seconds, she did nothing but breathe. In, out, in, out. The most important thing in the world reduced to its simplest function. Then her training kicked back in. Assessment, threat check, situational awareness. The ocean stretched in every direction. Black water meeting black sky. The only distinction, a faint line where stars ended and reflection began. No ship, no lights, no sound except waves and her own ragged breathing. The MV Black Horizon was gone. Dimitri and his crew already miles away, thinking she was dead. Good. Let them think that. Norah rotated slowly in the water, minimizing movement to conserve heat and energy. The flotation sleeve kept her mostly upright, head above water. But it wasn't a life vest. It was a survival tool. Enough buoyancy to keep her from sinking, not enough to keep her comfortable. Her ankles throbbed, blood still seeping from where the shackles had torn skin. Not arterial, not immediately dangerous, but open ocean. Blood meant attention, and attention in open ocean meant things with teeth. She pulled the cord from her wetsuit's inner seam, the same cord Flint had shown her how to braid years ago. Waterproof, tensile strength rated for climbing. She wrapped it tight around her right ankle, then her left, creating compression tourniquets that slowed the bleeding to a trickle. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from cold. The Atlantic in November wasn't freezing, but it wasn't warm either. 62 degrees, maybe 64. Cold enough to kill in 4 hours if she didn't move. Cold enough to shut down her core temperature degree by degree until her body simply stopped trying. She looked up, found Orion. The belt pointed southwest, just like Flint had taught her. And there, barely visible on the horizon, a vertical orange shimmer. Oil rig flare. 8 nautical miles, maybe 9, burning off excess gas from a deep-water platform, visible for miles in every direction. It might as well have been a lighthouse. Norah adjusted the flotation sleeve, positioning it to support her weight with minimal effort, then began to paddle. Slow, efficient strokes, arms barely breaking the surface, legs kicking in a shallow flutter that pushed her forward without advertising her presence. She whispered the mantra Flint had drilled into her during cold water training at Fort Story. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think. The pain in her ankles kept her sharp. The cold kept her moving. The exhaustion kept her focused on the next stroke instead of the impossible distance ahead. 3 more strokes, then breathe. 3 more strokes, then breathe. She fell into the rhythm. Let it carry her forward. Let it become the only thing that mattered. Behind her, blood dispersed in a faint trail, spreading, diluting, but not disappearing. And 60 feet below, something noticed. The first 30 minutes were manageable. Each stroke pushed Norah farther from where she'd been thrown. The flare stayed constant on the horizon, a fixed point to navigate toward. Her body settled into the work, muscles finding the rhythm, breath synchronizing with movement. But the temperature was dropping, not the water, her core temperature, sliding down degree by degree as her body burned through energy, trying to stay warm. Her fingers started to curl without her telling them to. Her jaw clenched involuntarily. Every few minutes she checked the flare. Still there, still distant, maybe half a mile closer, maybe. The math was simple and brutal. 8 miles at her current pace meant 6 hours of swimming, maybe 7. Her body would shut down from hypothermia in 4. 5 if she was lucky. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. She kept paddling anyway. 3 more strokes, breathe. 3 more strokes, breathe. She was halfway through her 7th interval when the water changed. Not temperature, not current, something else. A stillness beneath her that didn't match the rhythm of the waves. Like the ocean was holding its breath. Norah stopped paddling, let herself drift, listening, feeling silence. Then a low tug beneath her foot. Not aggressive, just curious, testing. She stayed vertical, didn't thrash, didn't kick, just floated, making herself tall in the water and scanned the surface. 20 feet to her left, a dorsal fin broke the surface. Dark gray, scarred, moving in a lazy arc. Oceanic whitetip, 12 feet long, maybe more. Blunt nose, wide pectoral fins. The kind of shark that followed ships and trailed wounded animals for hours. Patient, methodical. It circled her once at a distance, then disappeared beneath the surface. Norah's heart rate spiked, but she forced it back down. Panic released chemical signals. Sharks could sense fear the same way they sense blood. She needed to be stone, calm, uninteresting. She remembered the SRE instructor at Fort Story, grizzled old bastard who'd survived a helicopter crash in the Pacific and spent 16 hours in the water before rescue. He'd stood in front of the class, hands on hips, and delivered the gospel of shark encounters with all the warmth of a drill sergeant. Stay vertical. Make eye contact. You're not prey unless you act like it. And if it comes at you, you hit first. Gills, eyes, snout. You make it hurt enough that it decides you're not worth the effort. The shark came back. Closer this time. Close enough that Norah could see the pilot fish swimming alongside it. Close enough to see the scars crisscrossing its hide. It veered right, then curved back, testing her. Norah slowly unstrapped the dive knife from her thigh, the same blade she'd used on the zip ties. Still sharp, still ready. Her hands were stiff from cold, grip weak, but she switched to reverse grip and held it low against her leg. The shark disappeared again. Seconds passed. 10, 20. Then it shot up fast, not from the side, from directly below. Norah flared her left arm wide, making herself bigger, and turned just enough to lead the shark past her. It grazed her leg, rough skin scraping wetsuit, tasting the blood from her ankles. It rolled beneath her and looped around. She exhaled slowly, forced her heartbeat down, watched. The shark circled tighter now, committed. no longer curious, evaluating whether she was food. It came again, this time more direct, more committed. Norah struck first. She pivoted as it lunged, knife forward, and drove the blade straight into the gill slit as the shark passed. The knife sank deep, tore through soft tissue, came free. The shark thrashed. Its flank collided with her hip. The impact shoved her half under, salt water flooding her mouth. She came up coughing, gasping, chest burning, but she didn't let go of the knife. The shark circled again, slower now, trailing blood from the gill wound. Not fatal, but painful enough to reconsider. Then Norah saw the second fin, and the third. Two more sharks, smaller, maybe 10 feet each. They'd been hanging back watching the first one test her. Now they were moving in, pack hunting. Her stomach dropped. One shark she could handle. Three was a different problem. Three meant coordinated attacks, distraction from one side while another struck from below. The kind of tactical efficiency that made whitetips apex predators. The wounded shark peeled off, circling wide. The two fresh ones closed in from opposite sides. Norah reached for her belt with her free hand, found the emergency flare clipped beside where the flotation cartridge had been. Small cylinder, waterproof casing, designed for surface signaling, but it would work underwater for about 10 seconds. She pulled the ignition tab, shoved the flare beneath the surface, and released it. Magnesium ignited in a white-hot flash. The flare sank, trailing fire and smoke, spinning as it descended. All three sharks turned toward it. Instinct overriding strategy. The bright, thrashing object suddenly more interesting than the bleeding woman. They followed it down. Norah didn't wait. She turned toward the oil flare on the horizon and started paddling hard. Fast. Every ounce of energy she had left. Behind her, the flare burned out. The ocean settled. But the sharks didn't come back. She counted to 100, then 200, then stopped counting and just swam. Her body was shaking now, not just from cold, from adrenaline crash, from blood loss, from the realization that she just fought three sharks with a knife and a flare and somehow lived. And then she heard it, Flint's voice, clear as day, except he wasn't there. Baltic Sea, 83. When the Soviets threw me overboard, I thought I was done. Water so cold it felt like knives. Then I remembered what my old man said, Korean war vet, told me fear is just your body asking if you're sure. Answer is always yes. Norah's lips moved, barely a whisper. I'm sure. Keep swimming, kid. 3 more strokes. That's all. Just 3 more. She kept swimming. 45 minutes into the swim, the hallucination started. Hypothermia playing tricks with her brain. Neurons misfiring. Reality bending at the edges. At first it was just shapes in the water, shadows that looked like bodies. Then the shapes became clearer. Sienna Vale swam beside her, young, smiling, the way she'd looked before the accident. You're not going to make it, Norah, Sienna said. Her voice was kind, patient. Too cold, too far. Norah kept paddling. Shut up, you're not real. I was real, and I died in this ocean. Now you will too. Norah's vision blurred, tears mixing with salt water. No, I finish what I start. That's what I said. Look where it got me. Then another voice, deeper, rougher. She'll make it. Flint appeared on her other side, 68 years old, but swimming like he was 25 again. Strong, certain. She's tougher than both of us combined, he said to Sienna. Sienna shook her head. I died because equipment failed, Commander. She'll die because she's human, because the ocean doesn't care how tough you are. Equipment failed, Flint agreed, but she won't fail. She's got something you and I never had. What's that? She's got both of us. Every lesson, every drill, every moment of pain that taught her to keep going when it would be easier to quit. Norah's throat tightened. Her voice came out broken. Flint, I can't feel my legs. Don't need to feel them, he said. Just need to move them. Baltic Sea. I lost feeling at hour 3. Still swam another 3 hours. Legs work even when brain says they don't. 3 more strokes, then 3 more. That's all it ever is. Sienna's voice softened, lost its edge. He's right, Nora. He's always right. You know what my last thought was? Before the water took me? Nora shook her head, unable to speak. I thought, I hope someone finishes this. I hope someone makes it mean something. Sienna reached out, and for a moment Nora felt phantom fingers touch her shoulder. You're that someone. Finish what I started, what we both started. The hallucinations faded. Nora was alone again in the dark water. But something had changed. The cold was still there, the exhaustion, the pain. But underneath it all was something harder, something that wouldn't bend. She whispered to the empty ocean, to ghosts, to herself. 3 strokes, breathe. 3 strokes, breathe. And she kept swimming. Dawn broke slowly, like the sky didn't want to commit. Pale gold smeared across the horizon in thin slashes, turning the black water gray, then blue, then something almost welcoming. Nora squinted into the light. Her left eye was still swollen, half shut, from where Dimitri's men had beaten her. But the right eye tracked movement, scanned the growing visibility, looked for threats and salvation in equal measure. The oil flare was closer now, maybe 3 miles, maybe less. Still impossibly far, but close enough to see the platform beneath it. Steel lattice rising out of the water like a rusted cathedral, built by people who believed in function over beauty. Her breath came in ragged pulls, short and shallow. Her chest ached with every inhale, ribs protesting from the beating, from the cold. From hours of exertion her body wasn't designed to sustain. She was beginning to drift west, current pulling her sideways despite her best efforts. She recalibrated, starred a port, wind astern, kept the flare centered, and pushed forward. 1 stroke, pause, float, repeat. Her arms felt like lead. Her legs barely responded to commands. The flotation sleeve was still keeping her above water, but just barely. The puncture from the shark fight had created a slow leak. Not catastrophic, not yet. But in another hour, maybe 2, she'd be swimming without assistance, and she didn't have another hour in her. Then she heard it, faint at first, a low hum beneath the sound of wind and waves. She turned her head, scanning the sky, and saw it, a black dot cutting across the pale morning. Angular wings, twin engines, moving fast and low. MH-60 Seahawk, Navy bird. Nora's heart lurched. She reached for her belt with fingers that could barely close anymore. Swollen, stinging, white at the knuckles from cold and restricted circulation. Her hand found the signal mirror, retractable cord, reflective surface no bigger than a playing card. She yanked it free, angled it toward the sun, and caught the light. Flash, pause. Flash, flash, flash. 3 seconds. SOS, repeat. Her hand shook. The angle slipped. She corrected. Flashed again. Flash. Pause. Flash. 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 The helicopter was too high, too fast. It would pass overhead in seconds and never see her. Just another piece of debris in an ocean full of nothing. She flashed again, desperate now, ignoring the cramp in her hand, the exhaustion, the voice in her head saying it was already too late. Flash. Pause. Flash. 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 Inside the Seahawk's cockpit, Lieutenant Kara Hayes leaned forward, eyes scanning the instruments. The sensor operator beside her tilted his head. We just passed a glint off the water, 11 o'clock low. Hayes glanced at the coordinates. Reflection, probably wave scatter. Too rhythmic, the operator said. He adjusted the thermal scan, zooming in. And we've got a heat bloom, barely human temperature, drifting southeast. The crew chief leaned between them. Could be a decoy, They've used mirrors on buoys before. Draw us in. Ambush on approach. No signal buoy registers on sonar in these waters, the co-pilot said. And we've got a weird secondary ping. Passive signature. Military grade. Hayes's jaw tightened. She banked the bird hard left, dropping altitude fast. Not a decoy, she said. Decoys don't bleed. She keyed the radio. Skywatch 6 to base. We've got possible survivor in the water. Coordinating rescue approach. Back on the surface, Norah kept flashing. Her vision was starting to swim now. Black edges creeping in. Her body shutting down non-essential systems. Hypothermia making executive decisions. But she didn't stop. Flash. Pause. Flash. 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 The helicopter's rotor wash hit her like a wall. Sudden. Violent. Churning the water into foam. Wind tearing at her face. Her hair. The flotation sleeve. She looked up. The MH-60 was circling now. Nose tilted. Side door open. A figure in a dry suit leaned out, scanning the water. Norah let her head fall back. Let the water hold her. For the first time since Dimitri kicked that block, she stopped kicking. And the ocean held her. Hands grabbed her seconds later. Tactical gloves. Strong. Certain. A voice shouted over the rotor noise. U.S. Navy, you're safe. She opened her eye. Tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Just air. Then, barely a whisper. Tracked vessel. The rescue swimmer froze mid-lift, water streaming off his dry suit. Say again? Norah's voice came out like shattered glass. Norah Quincaid, Captain, Naval Intelligence, beacon still active, freighter. The swimmer's expression changed. Recognition. Shock. He hit his radio. Skywatch 6. We've got Captain Norah Quincaid. Repeat, Captain Quincaid. She's alive. Inside the Seahawk, Kara Hayes' hands went still on the controls. Quincaid? Intelligence officer reported missing 4 days ago? Affirmative, the swimmer said. And she's saying something about a beacon and a freighter. Hayes exchanged a glance with her co-pilot. Get her up, now. The rescue sling wrapped around Norah's torso, straps cinching tight across her ribs. Cold hands braced her neck as the winch engaged. Then the ocean dropped away. One moment black water, the next air and spray and rotor wash. She rose through it all, boots trailing, blood from her ankles dripping into the void she just escaped. The Seahawk's skids caught sunlight as gloved hands reached out and hauled her through the door. Get her down now, someone shouted. The cabin was hot, loud, voices overlapping, equipment clanking, doors rattling. Norah hit the stretcher and someone immediately pressed a thermal blanket to her chest. A medic leaned over her, cutting through her wetsuit, peeling it back. Her skin was pale gray, marked with pressure lines from the flotation gear. He tapped her cheek gently. Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name? She turned her head barely. Her lips moved. Norah Quincaid, Captain. Good. Where are you hurt? Everywhere. Her voice was cracked. Ribs, ankles, hypothermia. Another medic appeared with an IV kit. BP's tanking. 82/43. She's freezing from the inside out. Run saline with heat packs. The first medic looked back at Norah. Captain, we need to get you to a hospital. You're in bad shape. She grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak but insistent. No, turn around. Turn around where? She lifted her other hand, shaking, pointed east through the open door toward the horizon. Freighter, weapons, stolen Navy ordnance, 2 hours max before dock. The cabin went still. The crew chief stepped forward. You have proof? Planted beacon before capture. Lower hull port side. Tracking signature should still be live. The sensor operator spun his screen around, fingers flying over the interface. She's right. Weak ping. Telemetry. Signature matches military-grade passive tracker. Drifted about 3 miles northeast, but signals stable. Kara Hayes's voice cut in through the headset comms. Say again, what beacon? Classified Navy tracker, the operator said. Passive magnetic, not standard issue. She must have planted it before exfil went bad. In the cockpit, Hayes stared at the coordinates on her display. The blinking dot, the trajectory vector. She'd been flying search and rescue for 8 years. She knew when something was bigger than a pickup. Ma'am, the medic said, turning back to Norah, you need medical evac. You're septic. Core temp is critical. You won't last another. They threw me overboard 4 hours ago, Norah interrupted. Her voice was stronger now, fueled by something the medic recognized as pure, stubborn will. They think I'm dead. If you move now, they won't run. If you wait, they dock in Puntland and offload before anyone can build probable cause. The crew chief keyed his mic. Pilot, she's echo clearance. Operations authority. Hayes hesitated. She's barely conscious. She planted a tracker on a hostile vessel, survived interrogation, got thrown in the ocean, fought off sharks, and stayed alive long enough for us to find her. The chief's voice was flat, certain. If she says turn the bird, we turn the bird. Silence on the comms. Then a different voice, command authority, admiral level. Skywatch 6, medical evac is priority. Return to base immediately. Norah tried to sit up. The medic pushed her back down, but she spoke loud enough for the mic to catch it. I'm invoking Echo 6 field clearance. Authorization Quincaid 77 Delta. Operational command transfers to asset in theater when chain is compromised. I'm the asset. Turn this bird east and get me to USS Colorado. Now. More silence. Then the admiral's voice again, colder. Captain Quincaid, you are not in operational condition. USS Colorado is 40 miles east-southeast, Norah said. SEAL intercept team standing by. Freighter docks in 90 minutes. After that, evidence scatters and we lose the entire network. You want to explain to Congress how we let stolen Mark 48 torpedoes disappear because you prioritized one officer's comfort over national security? The line went silent for 5 full seconds. Then the admiral's voice came back, clipped. Colorado, this is Skywatch Actual. Prepare for priority asset transfer. Skywatch 6, you are cleared for intercept rendezvous. Kara Hayes didn't wait for confirmation. She banked the Seahawk hard east, nose dropping, engines roaring as the bird sliced across open water. Inside, the medic pressed a heat pack against Norah's collarbone and muttered under his breath, You just overrode an admiral. Norah closed her eyes. Let the warmth sink in. He'll thank me later. The crew chief crouched beside her, handed her a pen. Before you pass out, write the rendezvous coordinates, somewhere we can see them. She took the pen. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold it, but she pressed it against the back of her other hand and scrawled numbers. Latitude, longitude, intercept vector. When she finished, she let the pen drop and looked at the chief. Tell Colorado I'm coming aboard. Tell them to prep SDVs in full tactical loadout. Her voice was fading now, exhaustion finally catching up. And tell Commander Ashford I kept my promise. The chief nodded, keyed his radio. Outside, the ocean blurred past beneath them. The sun climbed higher, and somewhere ahead, invisible beyond the horizon, a black steel submarine was already beginning its ascent. Norah let her head fall back against the stretcher. Let the medics work. Let the helicopter carry her forward. She'd survived the ocean. Now she was going to make Dimitri Vulov regret ever hearing her name. The USS Colorado surfaced like something prehistoric, black steel breaking through blue water, shedding ocean in curtains that caught the light and fell away. Silent running breached, ballast tanks venting, the sail cutting upward until the whole boat sat low and dark against the horizon. From the air, it looked like a knife left in still water. Kara Hayes circled once, adjusting approach angle. while the crew chief opened the side door and rigged the transfer line. Wind roared into the cabin. Norah felt it on her face, cold and sharp, cutting through the heat packs and thermal blankets. Below, figures appeared on the submarine's deck, black dry suits, tactical gear, moving with the kind of efficiency that came from doing this 1,000 times. The Seahawk descended. Rotor wash hammered the surface, turning calm water into chaos. The stretcher line lowered, and Norah went with it, strapped tight, spinning slightly as the wind caught her. She didn't look down, just focused on breathing, on staying conscious, on not passing out before she could finish what she'd started. Her boots touched steel. Hands grabbed the stretcher, steadied it, and carried her toward the hatch. She caught a glimpse of faces, hard, professional. One of them locked eyes with her for half a second. Lieutenant Commander Cole Brennan, SEAL team leader, early 40s, square jaw, dark hair going gray at the temples, scar running through his left eyebrow. The kind of man who looked at problems and saw solutions written in violence and precision. "Captain Quincaid," he said, not a question, a confirmation. She nodded. "You look like hell. You should see the other guys." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Then he gestured to his team. "Get her below, medic standing by." They carried her through the hatch, down a ladder that clanged under boots, into the guts of the submarine. The air changed immediately, warmer, recycled. The smell of electronics and diesel, and something metallic. They moved her into what looked like a combination briefing room and infirmary. Later on a table, a Navy corpsman appeared, older and weathered, and immediately started checking vitals while another tech set up IV lines. Cole stood at the edge of the table, arms crossed, watching her with the expression of someone trying to decide if she was an asset or a liability. "You're septic," the corpsman said flatly. "BP's still in the basement. Core temp is climbing, but barely. You need a hospital." "I need an SDV and a team," Norah said. Her voice was stronger now, the warmth and IV fluids bringing her back from the edge. "How long until intercept window?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He pulled out a tablet, brought up a tactical display, and turned it toward her. The screen showed a map overlay, a blinking red dot moving northwest along a shipping lane. "Your beacon's still transmitting. MV, Black Horizon confirmed. Currently 73 nautical miles from Puntland Dock. ETA 94 minutes at current speed." Norah studied the screen, forced her vision to focus despite the exhaustion. "Distance from our position? 32 miles. We can intercept in 40 minutes if we push." "Then push." Cole set the tablet down. "With respect, Captain, you're in no condition to run an operation. You can barely sit up." She met his eyes. "I planted that beacon. I survived 72 hours of interrogation. I memorized ship layout, guard rotations, cargo locations, and structural weaknesses while they were beating me. You don't have that intel. I do. We can get that intel from you right now. You brief us. We execute. And if something's changed, if they've moved cargo or rotated crew or rigged the ship." She pushed herself up on her elbows, ignoring the corpsman's protest. "I know that ship. I know Dimitri Vulov. I know how he thinks. You go in blind. You're gambling. I go with you. It's a sure thing." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at the corpsman. "Can you stabilize her for 2 hours?" The corpsman hesitated. "Maybe. IV antibiotics, adrenaline shot, compression wraps. But after 2 hours, she crashes hard. And I mean hard. Sepsis doesn't wait." "Then stabilize me," Norah said. 2 hours is all I need." Before Cole could respond, a voice cut through the room. Deep, gravelly, familiar. "Brennan, listen to me." Everyone turned. A speaker on the wall crackled with static, then cleared. The voice came through again. "I trained that woman. I taught her cold water survival, tactical insertion, and how to stay alive when everything's going sideways. If she says she can do it, she can." Nora's chest tightened. Flint! Hey, kid. Commander Garrett Ashford's voice carried warmth despite the electronic distortion. You scared the hell out of me. Told you I'd finish what I started. Yeah, well, you're making me look bad. I said you'd last 48 hours. You lasted 96 and came back angrier. A pause. Now make them regret throwing you in my ocean. Cole looked at the speaker, then at Nora. Commander Ashford vouches for you. He trained half the SEAL teams in the Atlantic. Including yours, Nora said. Cole's expression shifted slightly, respect edging into the skepticism. He exhaled through his nose, then nodded to the corpsman. Stabilize her. Full combat protocol. She's going in. The corpsman muttered something under his breath, but got to work. 5 antibiotics, compression bandages around her ribs and ankles, an injection of epinephrine that hit her system like lightning and brought the world into sharp focus. Nora swung her legs off the table, tested her weight. Pain flared, but it was manageable. Distant. She could work through it. Cole handed her a tablet. Show me the ship layout. She took it, pulled up a blank schematic, and started drawing from memory. 8 hostiles confirmed, 3 per guard rotation. They work 8-hour shifts. Right now you're looking at the midday crew, less alert, more predictable. Her fingers moved across the screen, marking locations. Container arrangement blocks upper deck access here and here. Weapons cache is mid-deck hold, starboard side. Dimitri's quarters are forward, just below the bridge. Weak points? Cole asked. Engine room. No backup generator. You cut main power, they're blind and deaf for 45 seconds before emergency lighting kicks in. That's your window. Cole nodded slowly, impressed despite himself. Entry points? Ballast vents, port side, midline. They lead directly into the maintenance corridor adjacent to the engine room. I use them during infiltration. They're unlocked from the inside. You're sure? She looked up at him. I'm sure. He studied her for another moment, then nodded. Gear up. We launch in 20 minutes. Nora stood, steadied herself against the table, then followed Cole out of the room and into the narrow corridor beyond. They passed crew stations, control panels, men working with quiet intensity. They reached the equipment bay. Cole pulled open a locker and started laying out gear. Dry suit, rebreather, tactical vest, suppressed HK-416, flashbang grenades, breach charges. He handed her a dry suit. This'll fit, probably. She took it, started pulling it on over the compression wraps. The material was stiff, waterproof, designed for cold water operations. It hurt to move, but she didn't slow down. Cole watched her suit up, then spoke quietly. You don't have to prove anything, Captain. You already survived the impossible. No one's questioning your courage. This isn't about courage, Nora said, sealing the suit. It's about finishing the job. He handed her the vest. Fair enough, but when we're on that ship, you follow my lead. This is my team, my op. You're here as tactical advisor, not command. She met his eyes. Understood. And if you go down, we're not stopping the mission to carry you out. I wouldn't expect you to. He nodded once, respect solidifying into something close to trust. Then he turned to the rest of his team, filing into the bay. 6 men, all SEALs, all moving with the same quiet professionalism, checking gear, loading magazines, taping down loose straps. Cole raised his voice just enough to carry. Listen up, we've got 87 minutes until target docks. Intercept window is tight. SDV insertion from the east. Silent approach. Captain Quincaid has full ship intel and she's riding with us. One of the SEALs glanced at Nora, then at Cole. She good to dive? She just swam 8 miles in open ocean after being thrown overboard, Cole said. I think she can handle an SDV. The SEAL grinned. Fair point. Nora pulled on the rebreather harness, adjusted the straps, checked the oxygen mix. Everything felt familiar. Muscle memory from 100 training dives. She might be half dead, but she knew how to do this. Cole stepped closer, lowered his voice. "One more thing. Before we breach, I need to say something." Norah looked at him. "I doubted you in that briefing room back at base," he said. "Questioned whether you were ready for this kind of op. Thought the Admiral was making a mistake sending someone without recent field experience." He paused. "Commander Ashford set me straight over comms. Told me you're one of the best he's ever trained. And watching what you just survived?" He shook his head. "I was wrong about you. Dead wrong. I'd be honored to have you on my six, and I'll follow your lead on ship layout." He extended his hand. Norah shook it. "Apology accepted, Commander. Now let's go get those bastards." Cole smiled, then pulled back and addressed the team again. "One more thing. If Dimitri Volkov's on that ship when we breach, what's the call? Capture or kill?" Norah didn't hesitate. "Capture. He's worth more alive. Testimony, intel, network connections. And if he doesn't give us a choice?" She checked the magazine on her rifle, slapped it home. "Then we make it quick." Cole's smile turned cold, predatory. "I think we're going to get along just fine, Captain." 20 minutes later, they were in the water. The SDVs launched from the Colorado's dorsal hatch like shadows detaching from something larger. 2 vehicles, 3 operators each, battery-silent propulsion, thermal camouflage, invisible to sonar. Norah was crammed in the rear compartment of the lead SDV, pressed between Cole and another SEAL, chest tight against her knees. The rebreather fed her oxygen in steady rhythm. The viewport showed almost nothing, just dark water and the faint glow of bioluminescence trailing off the hull. Her beacon pulsed on the heads-up display, a steady heartbeat guiding them forward. 30 meters, then 20, then 10. The freighter appeared on thermal before they saw it visually, a massive heat signature above them, engines churning, hull cutting through water. Cole's voice came through the comms, low, calm. 60 meters to intercept, stack formation, silent approach. Norah's thermal display flickered. Heat signatures clustered near the bridge, but something else caught her eye. A separate bloom, midship, distinct pattern, someone moving methodically through compartments. She keyed her mic. "Cole, heat signature, midship section, movement pattern suggests placement activity." "Placement? Explosives. He's rigging scuttling charges right now." Cole's voice went flat. "ETA to intercept?" 4 minutes. How long to arm standard charges?" Norah's mind raced through every demolitions course she'd ever taken. 6 minutes if he's thorough, 3 if he's rushing. "Then we breach in 3, all teams, double-time approach." The SDVs surged forward, propulsion kicking harder. The element of surprise was gone. Now it was a race. The SDVs angled upward, rising toward the underside of the MV Black Horizon. The hull loomed like a wall of darkness. Rust, barnacles, shadows. Norah's hand found the beacon location. Portside, midline, still transmitting. Cole tapped her shoulder, pointed. The ballast vent was exactly where she said it would be. A grated opening, partially corroded, leading into the ship's interior. The team detached from the SDVs. 6 frogmen moving through black water with barely a ripple. Norah followed, slower, her body protesting every movement. But she kept pace. They reached the vent. Cole tested the grate. It moved. Norah had been right. Unlocked. He pulled it open. One by one, the team slipped inside. Norah went last, squeezed through the narrow duct, elbows scraping rusted metal, knees dragging over slime. They emerged into the maintenance corridor. Heat, noise, the thrum of engines just beyond the bulkhead. Cole signaled. 2-man teams. Silent sweep. And just like that, they were inside. Past steel, past noise, past excuses. The hunted had become the hunters. The corridor smelled like rust and diesel and decades of salt corrosion. Pipes dripped condensation overhead. each drop echoing in the narrow space like a countdown timer. Cole moved first, weapon up, scanning angles with the kind of precision that came from muscle memory written in combat zones most people only read about. Norah followed 3 steps behind, her HK-416 tight against her shoulder despite the fire burning through her ribs. The compression wraps helped, but every breath was a negotiation with pain. The epinephrine kept her sharp, kept her moving, but she could feel it starting to fade at the edges. 2 hours, the corpsman had said. She'd already burned through 20 minutes. The team split at the first junction. 2 SEALs peeled right toward the cargo hold. 2 more went left toward the upper deck access. Cole and Norah continued straight, moving toward the engine room with a 6th operator trailing as rear security. They reached the bulkhead door. Cole tested it, unlocked. He cracked it open, checked the angle, then slipped through. The engine room opened up before them. Massive turbines, belts spinning, the roar of machinery that never stopped, never slept, just churned fuel into motion and motion into distance. 2 guards stood near the control panel, cigarettes, bored expressions. One of them laughed at something the other said. Cole didn't give them time to react. 2 suppressed bursts. Both guards dropped before the cigarettes hit the floor. The SEAL behind Norah moved forward, dragging the bodies behind a turbine housing. Cole was already at the control panel, fingers moving over switches and breakers. 30 seconds until power cut, he said into comms. All teams confirm position. The radio crackled. Cargo team in position. Cache confirmed. Mark 48 seconds. Encryption devices. Navigation software. Everything she said. Upper deck team in position. 3 hostiles visual. Neutralize on your mark. Cole looked at Norah. Anything changes in the next 30 seconds, you tell me. She shook her head. It's exactly how I remember it. He nodded, then keyed his mic. All teams execute on power failure. 45-second window. Make it count. His hand moved to the main breaker, then stopped. The SEAL near the door raised his fist. Contact. Everyone froze. Footsteps echoed from the corridor beyond. Heavy boots, multiple contacts, voices in Russian getting closer. Norah's pulse spiked. They'd moved the rotation up, probably because of missing guards topside. Smart, adaptive, exactly what she would have done. Cole's eyes met hers. No accusation, just calculation. He signaled the team. New plan, silent takedown, no room for error. The door opened. 4 men walked in, not guards, engineers carrying toolboxes and maintenance logs, talking among themselves about a hydraulic issue in the steering system. They saw the bodies before they saw the SEALs. One of them opened his mouth to shout. Cole moved like water, crossed the distance in 3 steps, drove his knife into the man's throat, and lowered him silently to the deck. The other SEALs were already on the remaining 3, hands over mouths, blades finding vital points. No gunfire, no noise. 4 more bodies, 4 more problems solved. But now they were on a clock. Someone would notice the missing engineers. Someone would come looking. Cole wiped his blade, moved back to the control panel. Window just closed. We go loud. He threw the main breaker. The engine room went black. Emergency lighting kicked in after exactly 45 seconds, bathing everything in red. But by then, Cole's team was already gone. Moving through the ship like ghosts with purpose. Norah pushed through the pain, following Cole up a maintenance ladder toward the middeck. Her ankles screamed with every rung. Compression wraps soaked through with blood and seawater. But she didn't stop. They emerged into a cargo corridor, stacked containers on both sides, narrow walkway between them. Exactly as she remembered. The lights flickered, red emergency glow painting everything the color of a warning no one had heeded. Gunfire erupted somewhere above them, short bursts, suppressed weapons, shouts in Russian, then silence. Upper deck secure, a voice reported over comms. 3 hostiles down. Cargo team has the hold, another voice added. No resistance. Running documentation now. Cole acknowledged both, then turned to Norah. Bridge. She nodded toward a stairwell at the far end of the corridor. Through there, 2 flights up. Dimitri's probably movement. She saw him before Cole did. A man emerging from a side passage with a Makarov pistol already raised. Dimitri's deputy. The one who'd helped throw her overboard. Norah shoved Cole left and threw herself right as the first shot cracked past where they'd been standing. She hit the deck, rolled behind a container, came up with her rifle. The deputy fired twice more, rounds sparking off steel. Then he was moving, using the containers for cover, circling toward her position. Cole was pinned on the opposite side, unable to get an angle without exposing himself. Norah keyed her mic. Cole, I've got him. Keep moving to the bridge. Negative, we stay together. He knows I'm here. If we both go after Dimitri, this guy flanks us, and we're fighting a 2-front war. I handle him. You get Dimitri. A pause. Then Cole's voice, tight. 2 minutes. After that, I'm coming back for you. Won't need 2. She heard him move. Boots on steel, heading for the stairs. The deputy must have heard it too, because he shifted position, trying to follow. Norah stepped out from cover and fired. 3-round burst, center mass. The deputy twisted, took 1 round in the shoulder, dove behind a container. Blood sprayed, but he didn't drop, didn't slow down. Norah moved laterally, changing position, forcing him to recalculate. Her ribs throbbed. Her vision swam slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off faster than expected, but her hands were steady. The deputy appeared 10 meters down, pistol raised. They fired simultaneously. His round went wide, sparked off a pipe above her head. Hers caught him in the thigh. He grunted, staggered, went down on 1 knee. Norah advanced, weapon up, finger on the trigger. Drop it! The deputy looked at her, blood running from his shoulder and leg. He was finished, and he knew it. But his hand didn't release the Makarov. You should be dead, he rasped. Fish food. Should have used a heavier block. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might try to raise the pistol. Suicide by operator. Quick end. Instead, he let it fall. Clattered on the deck. Norah kicked it away. Pulled a zip tie from her vest. Secured his wrists behind his back. Tighter than necessary, he hissed in pain. That's for the waterboarding, she said. She left him there, bleeding but alive, and moved toward the stairs. The bridge was 2 levels up. Norah climbed slowly. WP leading, ears tracking every sound. The ship groaned around her, metal settling, engines still running despite the power cut. Emergency systems keeping the vessel on course, even as its crew was systematically neutralized. She reached the bridge level. The corridor was empty. A single door at the end, reinforced, sealed from the inside. She approached carefully, tried the handle, locked. Then the door opened from within. Cole stood there, weapon lowered, expression grim. He's inside, alone, but there's a problem. Norah stepped through. The bridge was larger than she'd expected, wide windows overlooking the deck, control panels glowing with emergency power, radar, navigation, radio systems, and in the center, standing beside the helm, was Dimitri Volkov. He looked exactly as she remembered, calm, controlled, hands clasped behind his back like he was posing for a portrait, except his right hand held a detonator. Captain Quincaid, Dimitri said, no surprise in his voice, just acknowledgement. I knew the ocean wouldn't take you, too stubborn to drown. Norah raised her rifle. Put it down, Dimitri. He smiled. Or what? You shoot me? The detonator is a dead man's switch. I let go, scuttling charges detonate. This ship sinks in 4 minutes with all your evidence aboard. Cole stepped to the side, flanking, but Dimitri shook his head. I see you, Commander. You move closer, I drop it early. Everyone dies. Americans love their heroic sacrifices. But I think Captain Quincaid has had enough swimming for one day. Nora's mind raced. Scuttling charges. He'd rigged the ship to sink rather than let them take it. Smart. Desperate, but smart. How many charges? She asked. Dimitri's smile widened. Enough. Placed strategically. Hull integrity fails. Water rushes in. Ship goes down fast. Your crew is still aboard. My crew knew the risks. Cole keyed his comms quietly. Cargo team, sit rep on explosives. The response came back seconds later. We found one charge in the hold. Active timer. 15 minutes counting down. Working on defusal now. Dimitri heard it through his earpiece. His expression didn't change. Only one? Your team is thorough. But there are 4 more. You'll never find them all in time. Nora lowered her rifle slightly, showed her palms, non-threatening. Dimitri, you're not walking away from this. You know that. Ships surrounded. USS Colorado has this entire area locked down. Even if you sink the ship, you're going into the water. And unlike me, you won't survive. Perhaps, but neither will the evidence. And evidence is what you need to justify this little invasion, to tie me to the theft, to prosecute. He tilted his head. No evidence, no case. I claim diplomatic immunity, Russian trade attaché, wrongfully detained by American military aggression, international incident. We have photos, testimony. Your crew will talk. My crew is loyal or dead. Either way, they won't testify. She took a step forward. Dimitri's thumb moved on the detonator, not pressing, just reminding her it was there. You threw me in the ocean, Nora said quietly. You tortured me for 2 days. You tried to erase me, but I came back. And now I'm standing here watching you realize that you made a mistake. Dimitri's eyes narrowed. What mistake? Thinking the ocean was on your side. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not fear, calculation. The realization that his perfect exit strategy had a flaw he hadn't accounted for. You know what I learned in that water? Nora continued, voice steady. Pain is just noise, and noise can be filtered, compartmentalized. You tried to drown that noise. Instead, you made it louder. She took another step. Dimitri's thumb moved fractionally on the detonator. Here's what happens next, she said. You drop that detonator. You surrender. You testify. And maybe you live long enough to see a courtroom instead of a cell in Gitmo, where rendition flights take people who make American weapons disappear. Bold words for someone who can barely stand. I've been standing for 4 days straight. You think 1 more minute breaks me? Dimitri's eyes flicked to Cole, then back to Nora. The math was simple. 2 operators, 1 detonator, no exit. You won't shoot me, Dimitri said. Too valuable alive. You said so yourself. I said we'd prefer you alive. Didn't say it was non-negotiable. Then Nora moved, not toward him, toward the detonator. She'd been watching his grip, watching the way his thumb rested on the trigger, watching the micro movements that telegraphed intent. She was faster. Her hands shot out, fingers closing around his wrist, twisting hard. Dimitri tried to pull back, but she'd already committed her weight, driving her shoulder into his chest, forcing him off balance. The detonator flew from his hand. Cole was already moving. He caught it midair, thumb replacing Dimitri's on the trigger, keeping the dead man's switch active. Dimitri staggered back, reached for something at his belt, a backup pistol, small caliber, barely visible. Nora didn't give him time to draw it. She drove her knee into his gut, doubled him over, then brought her elbow down on the back of his neck. He collapsed. She was on him immediately, knee on his spine, zip tie around his wrists, pulled tight enough to leave marks. You said SEALs don't own the water, she whispered in his ear. You were wrong. Dimitri's face was pressed against the deck. He tried to speak, but only managed to wheeze. Nora stood, breathing hard, looked at Cole. He was still holding the detonator. We've got a problem. I can't put this down without triggering the charges. How long on the timer? Cargo team says 13 minutes on the one they found. If the others are synced, we've got 13 minutes to defuse or abandon ship. Norah pulled out her radio. All teams, sit rep. The responses came back quickly. Cargo holds secure. Working on defusal. Need 8 minutes minimum. Upper deck secure. All hostiles detained. Standing by. Engine room secure. No additional contacts. She looked at Dimitri. Where are the other charges? He said nothing. She knelt beside him, grabbed his hair, lifted his head. You're going into the water either way. With me or alone. Your choice. But if this ship sinks, the only thing you've accomplished is drowning your own crew. That the legacy you want? Dimitri's eyes were cold, hard. But there was calculation there. Survival instinct fighting ideology. Finally, bilge compartment forward hold. Ballast tank starboard side. You'll never reach them all in time. Norah stood, keyed her radio. Team, we have locations. Bilge compartment forward. Ballast tank starboard. Move now. She turned to Cole. I'll take the ballast tank. I know the layout. You can barely walk. I can swim. That's what matters. Before he could argue, she was gone. Out the bridge door, down the corridor, moving as fast as her damaged body would allow. The ballast tank access was below the waterline. She'd seen it during her initial infiltration, a maintenance hatch near the same vent they'd used for entry. She reached it in 90 seconds, wrenched the hatch open, dark water sloshed below, and somewhere in that darkness, a bomb was counting down. Norah didn't hesitate. She dropped through the hatch into water that hit her like ice despite the wetsuit, submerged, disoriented for a moment. Then her training kicked in, and she oriented by touch. The charge would be attached to the hull, magnetic clamp. She felt along the inner wall, fingers searching, counting seconds in her head. 11 minutes. Her hand found it, brick of C4, digital timer, wires leading to a pressure-sensitive detonator. She pulled her dive knife, started tracing the wiring by feel. Cutting the wrong wire would trigger it immediately. Cutting the right wire would disarm it. But in the dark, underwater, with hands numb from cold and blood loss, there was no way to know which was which. 10 minutes. She closed her eyes, forced her breathing to slow, remembered every explosives course she'd ever taken, every trainer who'd walked her through defusal protocols. Red wire to positive, black to negative, green to timer, yellow to pressure sensor. She found the yellow wire, followed it to the junction, and cut. The timer kept running. 9 minutes. She cut the green wire. The timer stopped. For a moment, she just floated there in the dark water, holding the disarmed charge, waiting to see if she'd missed something, waiting for the explosion that would end everything. Nothing. She surfaced, gasped, keyed her radio. Ballast charge disarmed. Cole's voice came back. Cargo hold charge disarmed. Another voice. Bilge compartment charge disarmed. Cole again. That's all of them. We got them. Norah pulled herself out of the tank, collapsed against the bulkhead, and let the exhaustion wash over her. Her body was shutting down, the adrenaline finally gone, the pain no longer distant, but immediate and overwhelming. She heard boots. Cole appeared, saw her condition, immediately called for the medic. It's done, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We got them all. Cole crouched beside her. Yeah, we did. You did. She closed her eyes, let the darkness start to creep in. But before it took her completely, she heard voices on the radio. Colorado, this is Skywatch Romeo 6 inbound for exfil. ETA 6 minutes. And beneath that, another voice, older, familiar. Norah, can you hear me? She smiled despite the pain. Hey, Flint, you kept your promise. Always do. Then rest, you've earned it. And for the first time in 4 days, Norah Quincaid let herself stop fighting. 48 hours later, the world was quieter. Naval Medical Center, San Diego. Private room, clean sheets. The kind of silence that only came from being somewhere safe. Nora sat in a chair by the window, watching the sunset over the Pacific. Her ribs were wrapped properly now, her ankles stitched and bandaged. IV line running antibiotics that had finally pushed back the sepsis. She'd slept for 18 hours straight after they'd pulled her off the Black Horizon. When she woke up, the news was already breaking. Major international arms trafficking ring dismantled. Stolen U.S. Navy weapons recovered. Espionage charges filed against Russian national Dimitri Vulov and 14 co-conspirators. The door opened. Garrett Ashford walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. 68 years old, graying beard, weathered face marked by years of sun and salt. Walking with a slight limp from an old injury that never quite healed right, he handed her 1 cup, then settled into the chair beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke, just watched the light fade over the water. "They're calling you a hero," Flint finally said. Nora sipped her coffee. "They're calling me reckless." "Both can be true," she smiled slightly. Flint leaned back. "Admiral wasn't happy you overrode him. Admiral can file a complaint, but he won't, because I was right and he knows it." Flint nodded. "Dimitri's already started talking, gave up his entire network, supply routes, contacts, buyers. Turns out diplomatic immunity doesn't cover treason and espionage." "Good. The Mark 48s are back in custody?" "Everything. Encryption devices, navigation software. You saved a lot of lives." Nora turned to look at him. "I was thinking about Sienna." Flint's expression softened. "She used to say, 'Finish what you start, Quincaid, always.' I thought that meant I had to survive every mission, come home every time. But that's not what she meant." "What did she mean?" Nora's voice was quiet, certain. "She meant finish the mission, even if it costs you, even if it scares you, even if you have to go into the ocean with chains around your ankles and no guarantee you're coming back up. She meant don't quit, ever." Flint nodded slowly. "She'd be proud of you." "I hope so." They sat in silence for another minute. Then Flint spoke again. "Cole Brennan came by earlier, said his team wants you on permanent rotation if you ever get tired of intelligence work." Nora laughed. It hurt her ribs, but she didn't care. "Tell him I'll think about it." "Will you?" "Maybe, after I can walk without limping." The door opened again. Cole Brennan stepped in, followed by 2 of his SEALs. They were carrying something. A wooden plaque, custom engraved. Cole walked over, handed it to her. "From the team. Figured you earned it." Nora looked down at the engraving. Captain Norah Quincaid, Naval Intelligence/SEAL MV, Black Horizon Operation. They threw her in the ocean. She brought back the tide. Her throat tightened. She ran her fingers over the letters. "Thank you," Cole nodded. "You ever need backup, Captain, you call. Anytime, any place." "I will." He and his men left. The room settled back into quiet. Flint stood, stretched. "I should let you rest." "Flint," he paused at the door. "Thank you for everything. The training, the blade, the voice in my head telling me not to panic." He smiled. "That's what mentors do. We give you the tools. You're the one who uses them." "Still, thank you." He tipped an imaginary hat. "Anytime, kid." After he left, Nora sat alone with her coffee and the plaque and the sunset. She thought about the ocean, about the weight dragging her down, about the sharks and the cold, and the certainty that she might not make it. But she had made it, because Navy SEALs didn't just survive the water, they understood it, respected it, used it. And when the world tried to drown them, they came back stronger. Nora set the plaque on the windowsill where the last light caught the engraving. Then she stood, slowly, carefully, and walked to the window. The Pacific stretched endlessly before her, dark now, calm, waiting. She pressed her palm against the glass. I'm not done yet, she whispered to the ocean, to Sienna, to herself. And somewhere out there, beneath the waves, the tide turned. 72 hours after that, Norah Quincaid walked out of Naval Medical Center under her own power. Limping, bandaged, but walking. Flint waited by his truck, arms crossed, looking like he'd been there all morning. "Where to?" he asked. She climbed into the passenger seat, winced as her ribs protested, then looked at him. "Arlington. I owe someone a visit." He nodded, started the engine. They drove in silence through San Diego, onto the highway, letting the miles pass without needing words. 4 hours later, they stood in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60, the rows of white headstones stretching like dominoes, waiting for something that would never knock them down. Norah found the stone she was looking for. Lieutenant Sienna Vale, United States Navy, Navy SEAL. Born March 14, 1996. Died September 22, 2024. Beloved daughter, sister, warrior. She knelt slowly, placed her hand on the cold marble, and spoke quietly. "I finished it, Sienna. The mission, the weapons, Dimitri, all of it." She paused. "They threw me in the ocean, chained me to a block. Thought that would be the end." The wind moved through the cemetery, soft, reverent. "But you taught me something. You taught me that finishing what you start isn't about surviving. It's about refusing to quit, even when it's dark, even when you're drowning, even when every part of you wants to give up." She pulled something from her pocket, her SEAL trident, the pin she'd earned years ago, the symbol of everything she'd fought to become. She pressed it into the earth at the base of the headstone. "I kept my promise," she whispered, "always." She stood. Flint was waiting a respectful distance back. She walked to him and they headed toward the cemetery entrance together. Behind them, the sun broke through clouds, light spilling across the headstones, turning white marble gold. And if you listened carefully, beneath the sound of wind and birds and distant traffic, you could almost hear the ocean calling, waiting, reminding everyone who'd ever worn the trident that water didn't own them. They owned the water, and the tide always, always returned. Norah stopped at the cemetery gate, looked back one more time at the rows of heroes who'd gone before her, then turned forward. Flint opened the truck door for her. "Where now?" he asked. She smiled, tired, scarred, unbroken. "Wherever they need SEALs who don't quit." He smiled back. "That's everywhere, kid." "Good." They drove away from Arlington as afternoon light stretched long shadows across the road. 6 months later, Fort Story looked the same as it always had. Wind off the Atlantic, salt in the air, the sound of waves that never stopped. Norah stood on the observation deck, watching a new class of SEAL candidates struggle through cold water drills below. 22 operators in training, 3 of them women. One of the female candidates surfaced, gasping, hands still zip-tied behind her back. She'd been under for 40 seconds. Good, but not good enough. "Again," Norah called down. The candidate looked up. Fear flashed across her face, then determination. "How long was Lieutenant Vale's record?" she asked. Norah felt something tighten in her chest. These new candidates knew the names, knew the legacy. Sienna held her breath for 2 minutes, 18 seconds, zip-tied, waited, at 60 feet. "I'll beat it," the candidate said. "Maybe you will," Norah's voice carried across the water. "But first you survive it. Count. Breathe when you surface. Find the blade. Cut the ties. Kick. In that order." The candidate nodded, dove back under. Norah felt a presence beside her. Turned. Flint stood there, hands in pockets, watching the drill with the expression of someone who'd seen this 1,000 times. "You sound like me," he said. "Learn from the best." Sienna would have liked her. Flint nodded toward the candidate underwater. "That kind of stubborn." "Yeah," Norah smiled. "She would." They stood in silence, watching the next generation learn what they'd learned. The old ways, the hard ways, the ways that kept people alive when everything else failed. The candidates surfaced, hands free, breathing hard but breathing. "Better," Norah called down. "Again." Flint turned to leave, then paused. "You did good, kid. Better than good. You honored her, honored the tradition. And now you're passing it forward. That's what it's all about." Norah didn't answer, just watched the young woman dive back under, watched her fight the weight, watched her refuse to quit. "Finish what you start," Norah whispered. "Always." Below, the candidates surfaced again, faster this time, stronger. And somewhere in the wind off the Atlantic, Norah could almost hear Sienna's voice, could almost hear Flint's old instructors, could almost hear all the warriors who'd come before, teaching the ones who'd come after. The chain didn't break. It never would, because somewhere ahead, another mission waited. Another challenge, another chance to prove that training, discipline, and the refusal to surrender could overcome any darkness. Norah just watched the world below and let herself breathe. She'd been thrown into the ocean. She'd fought sharks and hypothermia and men who thought chains and weight could erase her. She'd survived. And more than that, she'd won. Because Navy SEALs didn't just own the water. They were the water. Relentless, unstoppable, returning with the tide again and again and again. No matter what the world threw at them, they came back, every single time. And that was a promise written not in words, but in salt and steel and the unbreakable will of those who refused to drown.